Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today on this Sunday? I'm just going to strap up my Les Paul here, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the Les Paul. Hey Mark, hey Matt, I mean, can you hear me okay? Let me know, Matt, if you can hear it okay. Hey John, how you doing? All right, awesome. Well, we've got a few people on, and today we are going to talk about the one of the classic rock and roll machines. The Gibson Les Paul. And I've got my Les Paul out here. And this one is, I think a lot of people wonder if it's really a Gibson. It is a real Gibson. It's not an old guitar. It's actually a 2011 1970s tribute. I actually did a review. It was one of my first YouTube videos that actually got some airplay. So anyway, hey Mark S. and Sam and Christian. Good to see all of you and Mahen. All right, yeah. Well, we're going to be showing a lot of these guitars and that I've got anyway. Now, this is my only Les Paul. It's not the only Les Paul I've ever had, but it's the only Les Paul I have right now. And I feel bad about every one I've ever let go. My very first guitar was a really crappy Epiphone acoustic where the action was about this high off the fretboard. And, you know, it made me want to quit guitar. And my second guitar, my first electric guitar, was that my dad and I worked out a payment plan and all that, was an Ibanez Les Paul copy. And boy, do I ever wish I kept that. It was an awesome guitar. It's one of the lawsuit copies. And boy, do I ever wish I kept that. But anyway, so I've always been influenced, I think, by the Les Paul. I've liked Les Paul players and all that. So I think for all of you that have a Les Paul, you know, maybe what we'll talk about is sort of what makes a Les Paul so great. So I'll just kind of keep talking and I'll look for your comments and we'll see where the conversation goes. But let me start by talking about this one. This is a 2000, like I said, it's either 2011 or 2012. I can't remember which. Gibson Les Paul tribute. You can see that there's no binding around this, and it's got the mini humbuckers that were actually redesigned in like 2011. I actually prefer the older Gibson mini humbuckers, but anyway, what's different about this particular guitar, other than that's a little bit different than a regular Les Paul, is that this is weight relieved. So it's got a chambered body. So it's only about 8.5 pounds, maybe 9 pounds as opposed to 12, but it's a big chunk of mahogany, as you can see from back here. And a couple of other things, obviously the pickups. And the other really unique thing on this one is the fretboard. Believe it or not, this is a maple fretboard. It is not rosewood. It looks like rosewood, but it's not. It's what they call torrefied. It's basically a baked maple fretboard, which is all the rage now. But it has, I just love the fretboard. It stays nice and clean and all that. And it's pretty low maintenance. And it's really good that way. The other thing, and it's kind of hard to see on this guitar, is that it has a volute on the neck. There you can see it. Right there. It has a volute on the neck, which is what they did in the 70s. So this was a tribute 70s. Now, for those of us who are Gibson Les Paul players, what are some of the things that we love? Well, we usually love the heavy weight of that big chunk of mahogany, for sure. The sustain that you get out of the guitar, right? And as Nigel Tufnell would say, you know, you can go out for a bite and come back and still hear it. Well, you would hear it if it were playing. Anyway, a lot of that has to do with the redesign of the bridge, the Tune-o-matic bridge. So this was something that was not on the original Les Paul. This came about, there were 3 incarnations of this. First, there was the trapeze version, And even though those are the most expensive guitars, they are they're if they're not perfect on the neck, they play pretty horribly. And then they came out with a wraparound bridge that allowed some adjustment. And then this was the third bridge that they came out, I think, within 55 on the gold top. So that's pretty cool. We all know it has the 2 tone knobs, right? And that's a little bit different in its time because other guitars just had 1 or none. And because of this, it allows all sorts of things like the Clapton woman tone. And, I commented earlier on Joe Bonamassa years ago that Joe Bonamassa is not one of my favorite players, but he's great, of course. Of course, he's a great player. He's not one of my favorites, but boy, does he ever know his way around a Les Paul and getting the most out of the tone just using these tone knobs. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, I think if you want to play the Les Paul, you have to have a chunky neck. You can't like the little wimpy, skinny necks of the Fenders. No offense to the Fender players, because they have the longer scale. Fender has the 25.5-inch scale, but Gibson only has the 24 and 3/4-inch scale. So that allows them to be a little bit slinkier with heavier strings. You can put heavier strings on this and still do all the bends. A little bit flatter radius so you don't fret out so much. So I don't know. I think it was just for those of us who grew up on playing Les Pauls, it's just my go-to guitar. It really is one of my 2 go-to guitars. It's my second favorite Gibson design, my favorite being the 335. Anyway, what I wanted to show you was that before we do any thanks, Kevin. I appreciate your comment that you appreciate my videos. What I want to talk about was just a little bit about the design. So, first of all, what is it about the Les Paul? I think we said it's the weight, it's the neck on it, a little bit thicker, shorter scale, and of course the humbucking pickups. Now these are the mini hums, but the full-size PAFs that Gibson came out with were groundbreaking, and they still sound great. To me, a rock guitar really is that humbucking sound. I mean, I'm a huge Hendrix fan and all of that. Love the Strat sound that he gets and that others get. But to me, there's nothing like a Les Paul rocking it out. It's real rock guitar. Hearing some of the stuff from Led Zeppelin or whatever just makes a hair stand up on the back of my neck. So anyway, so those are some of the things at least that get me about that. Yeah, and we talked about all that. So let me show you at least a little bit about some of the other influences of the Les Paul guitar. If you haven't, how many of you have a Les Pauls out there or are thinking about buying them? And if you have some stories about them, let me know. We could talk about them. I posted this on Facebook, and one of my Facebook friends, his friend actually has a guitar that was built in '52, and it's priced at, or it's valued at over $200,000, and just the case, it's in its original case, is priced at 25 grand. Can you imagine? Crazy. Yeah. So that's the other thing. I think that because the Les Paul has been, it's one of the 3 most iconic guitars, I think, along with the Telecaster and the Stratocaster, and it's widely copied. So you can pick up, used to pick up an Ibanez, but now you can pick up an Epiphone, or Agile makes some great ones, or I think Harley Benton does. Anyway, a Vintage. They're a company by Trev Wilkinson. They make great guitars, and they make some good, essentially copies of guitars, and their Les Pauls are really good. Some of the influences of the Les Paul, obviously that shape. Oh, that's another thing. For me, the body of the Les Paul, I think guitar, since it's a bigger instrument and we hold it against our bodies and so much, that the body of the guitar itself really makes a big difference. You got to be comfortable with it. Oh man, Mike. Oh, good. Would have been good if you had both of them. Hope you still have that Black Beauty from '73. That's great. But some of us, for me, the Strat body is just too big. It doesn't feel like it fits my body. So that's one of the things. Anyway, let's check out some of the influences that we have. From the rather obvious, here's another Gibson. This is a Melody Maker. Ooh, This is a melody maker. Just knocked off 200 bucks off that. It's a melody maker. So it's, it's a very different guitar. It's like a scaled down Les Paul, like a Les Paul Jr. as well, but it's still got that body shape, same thick neck, and so forth. Let's see. Another one of the more obvious ones. I'm really going to try not to bump this, and this is my favorite guitar, as most of you know. This is my personal favorite guitar. Is this 82 335, but the PAFs, obviously the scale and most of it is that way. The 335 overcomes one of the biggest difficulties of the Les Paul, and that is reaching the upper neck. And so that double cutaway allows you to do that. But obviously, that's there. Let's see. Here's another obvious copy of a Les Paul, right? This is Ibanez's version of a Les Paul after they got sued, and they came out with the Artist. This is a reissue, so it's not 1,000 pounds. But if you have one of the original Artists, they were like 13 pounds. They were a very heavy guitar. So just like the Les Paul, they were that way. But you can see this is a Les Paul, basically. Same finish, 2 humbuckers, same switching options, although this one has some weird ones where you can coil split and even run them in parallel. So it's some other options that are there. But that's one. Let's see. So those are some obvious ones. But then there's maybe some less obvious types of things. So the Les Paul Florentine. Now, this is not a Les Paul Florentine. This is not a Gibson. This is a much less expensive guitar. This is an Ibanez AGP or AXP or something like that. I don't know. They discontinued them. But it overcomes one of the issues that Les Pauls have, is the heaviness. So if you're holding them all night, that can be a problem on your shoulders or whatever. So this has a sustain block just like a 335, but it's got that nice, comfortable Les Paul body. Small, single cutaway. It's really I think the design of the Les Paul body is really beautiful. So it's often copied. To me, this one looks like a violin, but anyway, that's a different story. I'd love to have a Gibson Les Paul Florentine. Awesome stuff. Let's see. Some obvious things of where it's gone and where it's come from, right? So it didn't come from nowhere. It came from the big hollow bodies. So that's another one. I want to show you this one because this one actually does have the Gibson mini humbuckers, the early Gibson mini humbuckers. This is an Epiphone Sorrento, made in 1962. And these are Gibson humbuckers, mini hums. The last one I want to show you is this. And, this is not only influenced by a Gibson, right? This is clearly a Fender influence. And the body itself is clearly a Fender influence, as is the pickup there. But check this out. That right there, that's Gibson, right? That's the Les Paul. So it took the Les Paul to be able to develop that. And, this is a different bridge than, say, the Tele Ashtray. And it's just, this is a Reverend guitar. So Joe, I think his name is Joe Naylor, the guy who did Reverend, was clearly influenced by the Les Paul doing this. So even for some of the guitars that are not Les Pauls, they're clearly influenced by it. So it's just a real classic design. So what is Kevin? So that's interesting. I'm going to catch up on some of the comments here. Mark, you have a 2016 Studio with Monty's PAFs. Yeah, I think that's awesome. It'd be interesting to know what colors some of these finishes are. I know Gibson is having its troubles, and they came out with this last one, which was Blueberry Burst and had all the dip switches, and a lot of people were really dissing on it. I think it's actually cool, and I think they're smart to get with the times and offer things like coil splits or coil taps and different options so that, people can play a show and they can, or at least fantasize about playing a song or a show and and you know, playing with one guitar, you can play a Gibson and split the coils and get a Strat E sound. It's not going to be a Strat sound, but a Strat E sound or a Tele sound, and just thin it up when you need to. I think it's a great idea. And the early pickups were like that. Kevin says he has a 85 Silverburst. I love those Silverbursts. When I was in high school, I saw somebody. He was ancient, you know. He was like 25, and he was playing a Silverburst out in front of the music store, like for some event that they had, and we all showed up I think it was for a Halloween rock event. He had a Silverburst Les Paul. Oh, it was the coolest looking guitar I ever saw. Awesome. Oh, Les Paul Custom and Caribbean. I don't know what that is, but 1400, never got it to stay in tune. Yeah, well, one of the issues, there's a couple of issues with this. One is the bridge. The bridge is, I would say, you know, if you can take it to a guy who really knows how to set those up, it's helpful. I'm lucky I have a really good luthier, and he was able to help me set this up. This was not a guitar that easily stayed in tune. A couple of the other things that you might want to do. One is replace the nut with a bone nut if you don't have a bone nut, or something high quality. I'm a huge believer in bone nuts, so that's there. And then for the stuff above here, there's a thing called a string butler. Now, it's not the most gorgeous thing, but it does what the PRS does, and it makes these more parallel. Let me show you what the PRS has. See, the PRS designs its tuning pegs at an offset. They're coming in so that the strings go more straight, and it's that break angle that is problematic for staying in tune. So this PRS does stay in tune really well, and people claim that the product called the String Butler, so you can see that these fan out a lot more. People claim that the product called the String Butler works. It's about $40 or so, 40 US dollars on Amazon. I don't know what it would be in Europe, or elsewhere, maybe in Asia, but it's about $40. It's not cheap, but you don't have to alter your guitar. So it just kind of slides into the tuning pegs. It's kind of a bummer that they have to, you have to do something like that. I've never had to do it with mine, but I would say change the nut for sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I like the Blueberry Burst. I like the weird colors, and that. Yeah, and I agree. I like Reverends as well. Now, I don't have an SG anymore. The SG was the first. Actually, I don't think so, Mike. I think the SG special guitar came after the Les Paul. Les Paul's 52. I think this SG didn't come around 67, 68, something like that. Maybe it's a little bit earlier. I don't think the SG was the first guitar. One of the things about the SG, though, it's one of the reasons why Gibson developed my understanding is it's one of the reasons why Gibson developed the volute on the back of the neck. And I hear they also got it wrong, but that's another story. Is that a lot of the early SGs had their necks broken right around there. So that's what I've heard. I didn't have any problem with any of the SGs I've had. They're all good. All good to me. Oh, could I ever do a video of Les Paul How High the Moon? Yes, I'll do that one. I'll even do the Les Paul thing. I'll play it slowly and speed it up. So that makes me seem like I can play really fast. Yeah. So the other thing I'd like to talk about is, or I think it'd be kind of fun to rap about, is, you know, who are some of the players that that you think of when you think of a Les Paul? You know, maybe I can start us out, and I wrote down a couple of lists just off the top of my head. You know, obviously Les Paul, great player. Who was it that said that? It was Kevin who said that. Yeah, How High the Moon, great stuff, right? So obviously Les Paul was a great Les Paul player. Peter Green, yeah, absolutely. I have him written down as well. Mick Jones, yeah, absolutely. Mick Jones of Foreigner, I think, right? Yeah, yeah. Gary, who can think of the Les Paul without thinking about Gary Moore? Yeah, Huh. All right. Oh, I see. Yeah. In 61 was they put Les Paul's name on the SG. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. One of the things I do like about the SG, I like the thinner body and I like the brighter sounding pickups. I do like that. Um, and obviously the access to the upper front. I never liked the look of the SG really. Um, looks a little bit too hard to me, but that's just me. That's just a style thing. Yeah, Clapton. So a lot of people, yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Scooter. So Clapton is not usually associated with the SG, with the Les Paul. He's usually associated with the Strat, but he obviously did play Les Paul during his Bluesbreaker days and kind of defined the sound of rock guitar. Hey, hey, John from New Zealand. Awesome. Awesome. 5 in the morning. Wow, I'm honored. I hope you're having your coffee or getting a good workout or whatever. And I hope you enjoy your cherry Les Paul as well. Jimmy Page. Okay, yeah. So if you mention the Les Paul without Jimmy Page, I mean, that's Jimmy Page is the person. Sister Rosetta, did she play a Les Paul? I remember her playing an SG with that weird like what is it, a vibrola tremolo unit or something like that. Slash. Awesome. Yeah, so modern player. So Slash is a kind of modern player. He's one of my favorite players as of late. People diss Slash all the time, but man, he can play. And what I like about him is he doesn't overplay. He's usually playing something pretty melodic and understandable. So, and rhythmic as well. Yeah. Elliot Easton. Oh man, I have him written way down at the bottom, but I forgot about that. Yeah, and he Since You're Gone solo and so many of those other solos are really good. Mick Taylor. Somebody also mentioned Peter Green. Billy Gibbons. Yeah. Yeah, Billy Gibbons played Les Paul as well. April Wine. That's right. Yeah. I don't know the player's name, but that's right. Oh, Peter Frampton, of course. Peter Frampton, one of my favorite Les Paul players for sure. Let's see, who else have I got here? Oh, something that somebody mentioned the other day, Paul Kossoff, right? Paul Kossoff is Les Paul player, and he has that same sound. I was just listening to his stuff the other day, and there was a solo. Man, it made me think exactly of Angus Young. It seems like Angus must have been mixed at birth or something, or it must have been a huge influence one way or the other. Just the sound and the vibrato, so similar. Yeah, and Clapton, thanks for pointing it out, WS. And Mary Ford as well, Kevin. Yep, you got it. You got it. WS Clapton gave his Les Paul to George Harrison. I think that's it. It's the Les Paul that's used on, I forget what the name of that Les Paul is, but it's the Les Paul that's used on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I think that's a Les Paul, and I think that's the one that Clapton gave to the Tobacco Sunburst one that he bought in like a 64 or something like that he bought and gave it to George. Buckethead, yeah. Not one of my favorites, but he's got some technique, that's for sure. He's got that weird thing going on, but he plays a Les Paul for sure. Oh, Neil Schon, thank you for mentioning that, T-Bergs. Neil Schon's early Les Paul playing, I think, is I love that sound. I think I was telling people a little bit about the show that I saw with Def Leppard. It's a recent one. Def Leppard was on tour with Journey, and I was really looking forward to seeing Journey and hearing Neil Schon. And what happened was I saw Def Leppard, and I was never a fan of theirs, really, and they were awesome. The whole band was good, a lot of energy, sound was good. And then Journey came on, and Neil Schon was terrible. And it was like every song just sounded like mush, and he used a different guitar, and the sound was bad. And, his playing, you couldn't tell whether it was good or bad. His fingers were moving fast, but fast doesn't translate to good for me. So, yeah. Zach Wilde. Yeah, for sure, Kevin. He's one of the new one. Wait, Ron, you sold for $250? Wow, that happened. Ace Frehley. Yeah, thanks, Mike, for sure. For sure. Oh, and Mike Mandillo, Mick Taylor. Yeah. Great Les Paul player as well. Yeah. Alex Lifeson. Now, I don't remember that. I associate Alex Lifeson more with the 335, but I don't remember that. Oh, I see Peter Green's guitar sell for, is that right? $250? Yeah. Kirk Hammett. Okay. Then Kirk Hammett paid an arm and leg. Okay. Well, he's another Les Paul player, right? Let's see who's now. Nobody mentions this guy, but how about Pete Townshend, right? Pete Townshend was a Les Paul player, and the sound that he has, he is now. Yeah, he is now. I bet. Pete Townshend's sound, I think, and it's one of my favorite guitar sounds. Is the sound that he has on Who by Numbers. I'm pretty sure that's a Les Paul. And that sounds Slip Kid. If you guys don't know about it, look it up and listen to it. The guitar works really great on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and Gibson does make good acoustics, you're right, but they're not for they have a different sound. So they contrast with like Martin and Taylor. I was never a huge fan of Taylor guitars, although they're great guitars. I like the boomier sound of the Martins, but Gibsons have their own as well, their own sound. Yeah, great stuff. Let's see who I haven't mentioned. Dwayne Allman. Nobody said Dwayne Allman. He played Les Paul. Dwayne Allman. Kind of classic, right? Ace Frehley, I think people said that. Bonamassa, Neil Schon, Gary Moore. Dickie Betts. Yeah, if I'm going to say Dwayne Allman, how about Dickie Betts? All right. Buckethead Gateway. All right. Well, anyway, I'm there's so many good things, and I hope you guys love. I'm a huge fan. Like I said, Gary Rossington. Yep, for sure. Dean DeLeo. I don't know him from STP. I don't know that band. Yeah. So the only issue, I mean, there's some issues with the Les Paul, but we love them anyway, right? They're heavy, which isn't always good for our back or our shoulders. They got the thick necks. So if you're a real shredder, maybe you don't like that. Maybe you like the Ibanez Wizard neck or something like that. And hey, David, how you doing? Glad you could join us. Okay. Oh, Stone Temple Pilots. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's true. But probably the biggest thing that there is to hate about the Les Paul is they're so damn expensive, right? I mean, it used to, now Fenders are expensive too. If you want to buy an American-made Strat, you got to pay $1,000. I mean, I still remember when Fender was the guitar that you wanted to buy if you were a little bit cheap. You buy a Tele or a Stratocaster, it doesn't cost you all that much money. A Les Paul, nowadays, geez, you need a second mortgage on your house to get a Les Paul. So I was really interested in this new Les Paul. Two things kind of shied me about it. I've heard the neck is not the greatest, and the price tag, it's like $3,400, $3,500. I just don't have that much cash to put out. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind paying $1,000, honestly, if it's something I'm going to keep for a long time and really learn to love, and if it's something that I really like. But $3,400, I like too many different guitars to do that. I mean, honestly, we're spoiled as guitarists. We can buy a professional quality instrument, an electric guitar anyway, for $1,000, maybe for $1,500, and if you're a violinist, you're gonna have to spend $30,000. So I don't know if it's quite that, but it's a lot. Or if you're a flautist, I didn't say flutist, it's flautist. That's how I sound, all intellectual and all. All right. What do I think about the Epiphone copies? I've had several Epiphones. I really liked an Epiphone copy that I had in '96. Funny story, actually makes me want to bang my head. I had a first-year American Standard Strat that, for some stupid reason, I think it was in '86. For some stupid reason, I did a swap straight up for an Epiphone Les Paul in like '96. Why I did that, I don't know. I must have been, I don't know what I was smoking, but it was good stuff. And Yeah, but it was a good guitar. I honestly enjoyed that a lot more than I ever enjoyed that American standard Strat. So in terms of like worth and value, it wasn't worth it. But in terms of the play I got, I loved it. The neck on it was great. The pickups sucked, but I put in Seymour Duncan. I can't remember what I put in. I don't know what they were. Seth Lover pickups or something like that. SH ones. And the sparkle that guitar had after that was really good. But I got rid of that too for some stupid reason. But yeah, I love so Kevin mentioning melody makers. I love my Gibson Melody Maker. It's one of my favorites. I mean, honestly, my top favorite guitars are my 335, this thing, and my Melody Maker. And they give me a pretty versatile thing that I look for. I wish I could get I can get the dirty single coil sound out of the Melody Maker, but I can't get a dirty single coil sound out of this. So you should make violin posts. Yeah. Yeah, I really find the pickups and electronics on Epiphones are not where they need to be. Maybe on the higher end ones they are. I don't know. But you can replace them, right? I mean, if you get them inexpensively. And I think the main thing is many of these copy guitars, if the neck is straight and the fretwork is good and the body's good, then you can make it a good guitar by putting in the money and the work into it. You can change the pickups. I mean, Seymour Duncan makes tremendously good pickups. Gibson makes replacement pickups as well. And while they're not cheap, it's still cheaper than shelling out $3,500. The main thing, though, that's going to be different is you're not going to be able to resell that guitar for anywhere near what you paid for it. So that's the main thing. This particular, let me show you a guitar. I know I've said this to you guys before, but this particular guitar, which is an Ibanez, I like everything about it, but the lightning bolts. This was $137 on eBay. It was a piece of junk when I bought it. It was in really bad shape, but I decided to put a little bit of work into it. I said, I'm going to put in $50 into it and see if it improves it. I put in 100. So I got the frets redressed by a luthier friend of mine. And it made a difference. It made it a lot better to play. And then I replaced the bridge on it, and I put in different pickups. And so I probably put in overall, I end up getting the frets redone and the nut replaced. And so I probably put in $350, maybe $400 into it. But now for $500 I've got a great playing and sounding guitar, and I love it. You know, it fits well with me, but I'm never going to be able to resell it for that. I'm just not. And so it has to be something you're willing to lose money on. And you know, I mean, that's kind of how I resign. I'm not out to try and make money on guitars. If you're out to try and do that, then that's a different thing entirely. But I buy a guitar to get an instrument that's going to bring out the music from my head. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And that's why I put on different frets. I'm a big believer in that as well. Of course, I have a friend who's a luthier who does fret jobs. So maybe that has to do with the influence. He wants me to give him his money, or my money. But no, he does an incredible job for not too much. But having the fretboard the way you want it really makes a huge difference on the guitar, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, $137 on eBay. I got this. Pretty amazing. All right. Well, anyway, still, even as much money as I put into it, it's still not this thing. This is something that when I got it, it took me about a month to fall in love with it, and haven't looked back since. So everything's there. Hey, Walter, good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, I'm really happy you all showed up on this Sunday. For some of you, Sunday really early morning. For some of you, Sunday afternoon. For some of you, Sunday evening. I really appreciate you showing up and sharing your day with me. And we'll see you. Probably we'll see you next week. We'll do another one. I have to think of a good topic. I think Matt Delahunt put out the topic, the most underrated guitar players. I love that topic. I think that's a great topic. The sister topic to that one is the most overrated guitar players. And I hate that topic because I think anybody who's, for the most part, making it, they're not overrated. They're probably better than you think they are. And they're making a living and they're a professional at it. And, I think I remember years ago seeing a topic where the most overrated guitar players, and it was see a Scooter, have fun in Asheville. I think somebody was really going off on the edge. And I'm like, dude, the guy created like 8 or 10 songs that you can remember the guitar parts to, off the top of your head. How many have you created like that? How many have some of these great guitar players? How many has Paul Gilbert created? Not to mess with Paul Gilbert. He's one of the best players that ever lived, for sure, in terms of technique and that. And he's a real humble guy too. But the overrated stuff is not so good. But underrated guitar players, yeah. So maybe that's something we'll do. Yeah. Okay. Wrecking Crew review. Oh, yeah, we could do that. We could talk about some of the wrecking. That's a great topic as well. We could talk about some of the early folks of the Wrecking Crew, right? Glenn Campbell and, of course, the great Tommy Tedesco, guy who always had these great stories. But yeah, if you haven't seen that documentary, if you have Netflix, you should check it out. It's a great documentary on the Wrecking Crew, some of the early days. Yeah. 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 A lot of great. Can't underrate Kiss. I hear you, Scooter. I hear you. I don't know. All right. Okay. T-Bergs, I don't have a Dan Electron. I've never played one. That guy Rick Beato has one, and he swears by it. He always plays it, and so maybe you want to check out his channel. I don't know, but I've never had one. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, it's been a great time talking with y'all, and enjoy the rest of your guitar day. All right. We'll see you on down the road.